Welcome back to our AP Biology series. This week, we're going to be looking at the biological macromolecules. So macromolecules are essential for everything in life, and during today's episode, we'll be covering the 4 macromolecules you must know in order to do well on your upcoming AP Biology exam. So we must start out with, what are macromolecules? Macromolecules are complex, large molecules that are used in all essential life functions. What are the 4 macromolecules we'll be discussing today? They are proteins, carbohydrates, lipids, and nucleic acids. Each of these macromolecules has its own unique structure, and if you know anything about structure when it comes to biology, structure equals function. With this logic in mind, we now know that each of these macromolecules not only has its own unique structure, but also has its own unique function within the living organism. So to understand macromolecules, we need to understand the properties that are unique to macromolecules. The first of these properties is that macromolecules are organic. Simply put, organic means that the majority of the atoms in the molecule itself are composed of carbon atoms. Along with these carbons, we also see nitrogens, oxygens, and several hydrogens. Property number 2, macromolecules are made of polymers. What is a polymer? A polymer is simply a form of a molecule that is made up of smaller subunits, and we call those subunits monomers. So monomers collectively form polymers, and these polymers are what we refer to as macromolecules. For example, when we're talking about carbohydrates, the macromolecule of carbohydrates is formed by many monomers, like sugars, that when they add together, they form the polymer that we know as a carbohydrate. Proteins, very similarly, are made of small monomers called amino acids. The third and final property of macromolecules is that macromolecules are highly diverse. As I mentioned earlier in the video, structure determines function. And because each of these macromolecules have many diverse ways of forming their own structure, they also have a diverse way of having multiple functions and this is very important in the cell, as this diversity in function leads to the ability of each of these macromolecules to perform all the jobs needed for life to occur. So we now know that structure determines function. So let's look at the variety of structures that each of these macromolecules have and the functions of each. The first is carbohydrates. So carbohydrates are our body's primary form of energy. They are made up of sugar molecules, and they can be found in various forms, from simple sugars like glucose to complex carbohydrates like starch and cellulose. Number 2, lipids. So lipids, very much so like carbohydrates, are another form of energy source. However, these are long-term energy stores within the body. And beyond just having the ability to be utilized for energy, they're extremely important for things like your cell membrane. So when we think of lipids, we're thinking of things like the phospholipid bilayer of your cell. And we're also thinking of things like triglycerides, something that's probably familiar to you that you've heard before. What about proteins? Proteins are probably the most versatile and diverse category of macromolecules. Proteins literally do everything inside of your cells. They are involved in various functions like enzyme catalysis, structural support, and even your immune response. Proteins are made up of those monomers or building blocks called amino acids. So amino acids build upon each other to form our proteins, and their sequence is what is going to be determining that protein's specific function. Our fourth and final macromolecule is nucleic acids. So when we think of nucleic acids, we're thinking of RNA and DNA. These macromolecules are crucial for inheritance traits, and they provide all the genetic information that the cell needs to function. The 4 macromolecules, proteins, carbohydrates, lipids, and nucleic acids, all have unique structures and functions. Understanding what those structures are and how they are built of various monomers and the function of each will be highly important for understanding why we need each of these macromolecules to function as biological organisms, as well as to do well on your exam. If you found this video helpful, like and subscribe to our channel for more AP biology content. We'll be back next week with more information. Please follow our series, and of course, drop your comments below if you have any questions you would like us to answer in future videos.